to my channel. If you're new, my name is Erica and I do sewing and quilting tutorials here on YouTube. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make these really fun and easy vinyl zipper pouches. These projects are perfect for holding flatter crafting projects like stitching, embroidery, cross stitch, and more. They've got a clear vinyl opening right here so you can see exactly what's inside your project bag, and then a zipper closure to keep everything inside safe and sound. If you haven't worked with zippers before, don't be afraid. This tutorial could not be any easier. If you're a brand new beginner, you can definitely make this project. The supplies for this pouch are super simple. Let's go ahead and get started. Supplies for this project are easy. You're going to need a little bit of batting, some fabric for the back side, some fabric for the inside lining. You'll be able to see that. You'll also need an accent fabric, some binding fabric, and then a zipper. And then you'll also need this clear vinyl. You can buy this at most craft stores. I got mine just at Joann's, and it's just kind of a heavier weight vinyl. Super easy to sew with. It's just a little slippery, so you'll see as we're putting it together. You'll also need some regular sewing supplies, and I think that's about it. Instructions for exact cutting measurements for all of these pieces will be in the description box below this video. So make sure to click the show more link, and exact cutting instructions will be under there for you. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're just going to make this little quilt sandwich here. So I've got my backing fabric pretty side down, so wrong side up. Next I've layered my batting piece, and then I'm going to put my inside fabric that I want to be shown inside the pocket on the top, right side up. And we're just going to layer all three of those pieces in order on top of each other. And then I always forget to say this in my supplies, but I am going to use a little bit of this 505 basting spray. This is a temporary spray adhesive, and all I do is just kind of pull it back a little bit, spray a little bit on there. We really just need enough to hold this in place while we quilt this project really quickly. You could also use pins. And then once I have that side done, I'm going to do this side. And as you can see, I'm just spraying a little bit on here, really just enough to kind of hold it in place. Now I'm going to take this over to my sewing machine, and I'm just going to quilt some lines on here just to kind of keep everything together. You could do a fun design on here, but I'm just going to take it over to my machine, sew some quilting just to keep all three of these layers together, and then I'll meet you back here. Alright, so here is our quilted piece. Now I didn't get too fancy, I didn't even draw lines. I just did a straight line every couple of inches all the way across. So that's good enough for me. We're going to go ahead and set this piece aside now. Next we're going to be working on our zipper. So we're going to take our zipper and our two pieces that are 2.5 inches wide, and we're going to be attaching them to our zipper. So the first thing we're going to do is take one of the pieces and lay it right side up. Then we're going to take our zipper, we're going to layer that right along that top edge, and I'm actually going to pull my zipper open a little bit just to get the tab out of the way. So we're going to lay that across the top, and I'm just going to kind of center my zipper so that this end and this metal stopper are centered. Then I'm going to take my next piece and layer it right side down on top of that whole thing. Then I'm going to take a couple of wonder clips and pin it in place, and we're going to take this over to our sewing machine and sew right along this top edge. Now you can use a zipper foot if you like. I don't have one on my machine right now, so I'm just going to use my regular 1/4 inch foot. So this is what we should be looking like now. I'm just going to take this over to my ironing board and press these pieces both back, and then run a top stitch right along the top of this zipper just to finish it off. So here is the finished top portion of our zipper. Now we're going to go ahead and just set that aside. And the next thing we're going to work on is our clear vinyl pocket. And so I've taken our other piece of accent fabric that's 3.5 inches wide, and I just pressed it in half this way, and then opened it back up and pressed the long edges in towards the center. So we've got them both meeting in the center like this, and then I folded it in half again and just gave it another good press. Next we're going to take our vinyl, clear vinyl, we're just going to put it right inside like so. Okay, so I just have it pushed all the way up to this folded edge right here. Now we're gonna take this over to the sewing machine and I'm just gonna sew right along this bottom edge just to secure it front and back to our clear vinyl. All right, so as you can see, this is pretty easy to sew with. It is just a little bit slippery, so you usually have one side that kind of looks better than the other. So I just flip this to the side that looks best, and so that side is up. And then we're gonna take it right over here to this zipper and just make sure these edges are kind of lining up. And then we're gonna just sew it right on to the zipper. All right, so here is our finished front vinyl piece, and then now we can go ahead and just trim off our excess zipper. And I just kind of lay it on top of here just so that I have a guide for how much to trim off. Doesn't have to be perfect. All right, and then we can kind of set this aside. We need to now work on our binding. And so I said to purchase a fat quarter for the binding. You could also probably get away maybe with a fat 1/8 as well, but you basically need 3 strips of 2.5 by about 22 or so inches long for your binding. We're just gonna take the strips and I'm just gonna place them right sides together, sew down this edge 1/4 inch, and then I'll take this one and add this one to it. And sew that down 1/4 inch so we have one big long strip. Now to prepare our binding, you can see we have this nice big long strip. All I've done is taken it over to my sewing machine and then pressed it in half lengthwise, and then when I get to a seam I just press that seam open and then keep on going. So now we're ready to assemble our bag. So I've taken my outer pocket and laid it just right on top of our backing piece, and I'm just going to take this over to my sewing machine and run a basting stitch around all 4 sides of this just to kind of hold our pocket in place. This stuff can be a little slippery, makes it a little bit easier when we're ready to attach our binding. So here it is just kind of basted together, and if you don't know, basting stitches are just really wide stitches. So I usually just set my machine to the widest stitch it'll go, and then I just carefully sew it around the edges. And this stuff does kind of slide when you get down into this area, so just kind of hang on to it, do the best you can. But now we're ready to bind it and then we'll be done. All right, so I'm going to start down here in the center of the bottom, and I am just taking my piece with the raw edges lined up with the raw edges of my bag, and I'm just going to kind of put the open end down here towards the center. I'm just kind of eyeballing it, I didn't measure. And then I'm going to come all the way down here so that I have this kind of floppy tail. And I'm going to go ahead and start. So at 1/4 inch, I'm just going to start sewing around my bag. Now I can feel where my project ends right here. So at about 1/4 inch from the ending, I'm just going to lift up my foot, turn just slightly, and then back stitch. And then cut my threads. Now I'm going to turn my project, and my binding strip is coming off to the right here. I'm going to put my finger right here and fold it up so that my binding strip raw edge is now along the raw edge over here. So we kind of have that. And then I'm going to pull it back down towards myself. So now we have this little kind of triangle flip there. I'm going to go ahead and just keep on sewing down this edge. Now when we get down here, just be careful you don't sew over that metal piece. You will break your needle. So we're in our last corner now. I'm going to just sew down a little ways so that I have a tail here left. Okay, so now we have these 2 tails, and I will show you how to join them. All right, so we have these 2 ends, and if you remember, I started the one kind of in the middle. I kind of eyeballed it. So here's this end. And now what I want to do is place this one directly on top of it and just measure 1/4 inch. Make sure they're nice and kind of tight. You don't want it loose. I'm just going to eyeball it actually, but measure 1/4 inch so they overlap by 1/4 inch right here. And then I'm going to trim this piece off where I marked it. Okay, so we have that. And then we're just going to layer these two pieces together like this, and then open them up like so. And I'm just going to take this over to the sewing machine and sew down this edge 1/4 of an inch. And since this is a smaller piece, I always find it easier to fold it in half. I just like to get my pieces going the right direction before I do that. That way I know that they'll lay flat. Okay, now if we did everything right, when we lay it flat, they should just lay flat like that. I usually go ahead and just finger press this seam right here open, and just kind of give it a press, and then I'm just going to finish sewing right along this edge. Alright, so here we have our binding completely sewn on the front side. So now we're just going to take this over to the machine. I'm going to pull the binding down like this, and then wrap it around the back side, and we're going to sew along this edge to attach it. Now when we get to the corners, I just kind of push the corners in like this, and then I'll show you how to sew it. Okay, so here we are at our first corner, and I'm actually going to take this bottom edge and fold it up, and then I kind of place my finger right here and then fold this right edge over, and I do my best to get a point right here. That's pretty good. Now I'm going to lift my presser foot but keep my needle in the down position, lower it, turn my work, and keep on going. Okay, we're coming down to this next corner, and if you'd like, you can also kind of do this opposite where you're coming straight down like this and then fold up the bottom edge. Sometimes that works a little bit better to get that nice point right there. So we'll go ahead and do it that way for this one. Now I forgot to mention, we did just sew over this zipper side, and just make sure that your pull is out of the way. I had already checked mine, I just forgot to tell you guys. So just something to be aware when you're sewing on this back side. I added some fun zipper pulls just to finish it off, and I will link where I got these below. And there you have it, your finished project bag. Alright guys, that is it for this super easy project. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to thumbs up and subscribe. That way I know to keep making fun tutorials for you. And by the way, if you're curious about the fabric that I used in this project, this is by Pam Kitty Morning. She has really fun, bright, cheery floral fabrics. And I'll try and put a link to her site for you guys below. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you next time.